Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight or tomorrow if you're watching the recording. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about resource guarding. All things resource guarding. We have a couple questions that were submitted ahead of time, so thank you for those. I'm going to get to questions at the end. So while I'm going over some slides and some basic information, if there's any questions that you can think of, throw them in the chat and I will get to those at the end of everything. This Q&A is meant to be a supplement to the resource guarding series I recently did on the blog. So if you missed that, we're going to throw the link for that whole series into the chat box for you. There was a whole bunch of posts I did consecutive weeks of resource guarding topics, and there's a lot of really good information on the blog there. This is meant to supplement that. So go check those out after you watch this. So we're going to get started. I've got some slides. Hi, Carolyn. Yeah, tell us where you're from. Throw it in the chat. Say hi. John is helping me behind the scenes, kind of monitoring things. So if I miss anything, hopefully he'll pull it in. I've got a couple slides we're going to go through, and then I'm going to handle whatever questions pop up. So tonight we're going to talk about what resource guarding is, and more importantly, what it's not. So here we go. Resource guarding is not your dog being dominant. It is not your dog being bad, and it is not your dog being the alpha. Resource guarding, next slide, please. As my mentor, Jean Donaldson, says in her fantastic book all about resource guarding called Mine, guarding food, objects, mates, and spaces are highly adaptable traits in a natural environment. If dogs had to fend for themselves tomorrow, guarders would have the survival and reproductive edge over non-guarders. Basically, resource guarding is a completely normal dog behavior. We may not like it. We can help dogs be more comfortable with things that they find valuable, but it is a completely normal behavior. Next slide. So this is a little bit of a screenshot from my resource guarding handout that my private clients get. But basically, resource guarding, completely natural. I get it. It's dangerous. Your dog is growling at you or lunging at you. Super scary. We definitely don't want that happening, but it does not make your dog a bad dog. So guarding in dogs, completely normal, doesn't make your dog a bad dog. And we can help them feel more comfortable about things. We can do systematic training and work with the dog at their comfort level to help create new associations or train alternate behaviors. So instead of picking up an object, we can teach them to leave it or drop it and make those alternate behaviors pay off better than stealing your socks or your underwear. Next slide, please. So domesticated dogs don't need to guard for survival like their wild counterparts do, but that doesn't mean that they still don't have the software in their brain, in their DNA. They still have a little bit of that software that tells them that they should guard and that their life depends on it. Because if they were in the wild guarding that carcass or guarding their den with their litter, with their babies, those are survival traits. Those are things that require them to guard for perpetuation of their DNA and for survival. So our dogs, domesticated dogs, even though they don't need to guard for survival because we're giving them free food and we're giving them resting spots, and a lot of times we're altering them so they don't have to worry about reproducing. But it doesn't mean that they still don't have that software. Next slide. And the fact that our companion dogs don't guard more often is actually kind of a miracle. When we look at all other canine species, wild dogs, free roaming dogs, so street dogs, wolves, dingoes, coyotes, they guard 100% of the time and they get it right all the time because their survival depends on it. So they're not guarding things like underwear, but they are guarding garbage or resting spots or mates. And that contributes to survival in the wild. Next slide. So our domesticated dogs can be a little buggy with this software, which is why they guard things that we don't understand. We don't understand why they guard our lingerie or baby socks or use tissues. I've had dogs guard all sorts of disgusting things that kind of don't make sense. But to that dog, it makes complete sense. Next. So what are the common types of guarding? So we've got food guarding, object guarding, which includes toys, high value chews like rawhides or bully sticks, socks, pens, tissues, underwear, anything that's an object. Food would include, food in a bowl or a food toy, things like that. Locations like resting spots, couches, beds, dog beds, sometimes entire rooms. So I've had dogs guard kitchens or pantries where the dog food is kept. And then sometimes we have dogs who guard their favorite person. On the blog, independent of the resource guarding series that I did, I have 2 separate posts, one specifically for food guarding and one for object guarding. And both of those posts have training videos embedded in them. So those are also going to be thrown in the chat there. So you can go there, or you can use the search function on the website and pull those up. Next. So what are the keys to successful training? How do we help dogs who are guarders? First and foremost, incredibly important, no aversives, meaning no yelling, no scolding, no punishing, ever. Never, ever, ever. So when a dog is communicating, when they're yelling, when they're barking or growling or lunging, they are already upset in that situation. If we punish them in that situation, we're not helping them feel better in that situation about the thing that they're upset or the thing that they're trying to guard. All we're doing is punishing them for telling us that they're upset. So we don't want to do that. That creates a dangerous dog, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So we never want to use aversives. And I know it's counterintuitive. It's hard if your dog is growling at you to not instinctively, no, don't do that. You want the dog to stop growling. I want you to happy talk, and I want you to throw food at the dog. And it feels really counterintuitive, like you're rewarding bad behavior. But we're trying to diffuse that stressful situation. If we start yelling at the dog or scolding the dog or punishing the dog in any way in that situation, it's going to escalate any tension that's already there, and it's not going to help the dog feel better in that situation. So we want a happy talk. We want to try to diffuse that situation and bring that tension level down. We want to train with an incremental plan and structured training sessions. Usually those sessions, we try to keep them to 5 to 10 minutes. We might be able to push it to 15 minutes if you have a bigger dog with a good stomach. But we really want to train in short training sessions that we are controlling and manipulating how difficult we're making it for the dog, so that we're helping create those positive associations, and so that we are training with a purpose. We're not just winging it. We're following a very deliberate plan. And that's where having a professional on board to help guide you is so incredibly important. So that is the second most important piece. Next slide. Being aware of body language. So when we're going through this whole guarding process and helping dogs feel more comfortable about having stuff taken away, or about having us approach them when they're resting, or any of those, guarding situations, we need to be acutely aware of that dog's body language. I do have a free resource on dog communication on the website under free resources. We're also going to throw the link in the chat for that. But learning your particular dog's body language is so incredibly important. That is the only way dogs can communicate with us. And it is up to us to learn that language and to learn your dog's particular dialect of that language. So not every dog is going to present and give off the same stress signs as another dog. So we need to learn that dog's body language and learn, the very subtle signals. So things like lip licking or yawning or whale eye or any of the really sort of subtle body language signs. Those are the ones you particularly want to hone in on, because if we can capture those early warning signs when the dog is starting to get tense and upset, then it prevents the dog from having to escalate to something like a growl or a lunge. So focusing on that body language, learning that over time. The next thing we want to talk about is how we successfully train resource guarding. So we have two approaches that we can take. We can condition a positive association. So we can help the dog start to learn to feel better about having stuff taken away, or having us approach while they have food, or having us approach while they're sleeping. Or I usually train both of these at the same time, training an incompatible alternate behavior. So instead of trying to remove an object for the dog, can we teach the dog to drop the object on their own and then get rewarded for that? So your dog may really like your panties, but I guarantee he really likes steak probably more than your panties. So if your dog is stealing items, obviously we want to manage that. Managing a resource guarder's environment is incredibly important. So, if you have a food guarder and you haven't gotten far enough along in training, maybe we talk about creating a safe space for eating time. So maybe your dog goes in the kitchen with a baby gate, or goes into an X-penned area as a management solution. They eat their food, then you open the gate, they come out, you go in, you retrieve the bowl. So there's no chance of the dog guarding against you until we get farther along in training. So that's where those structured training sessions come into play versus real life, where maybe we're managing temporarily until we get farther along in training. So working to condition that positive association. And I will say, when I work with puppies or dogs who are not guarders, we want to do prevention exercises. So if you have a new puppy, or you have a dog who is not guarding, and maybe it's a new rescue, you've just gotten it, channeling some training energy into resource guarding prevention is super important. And I do have a blog post specifically on that for puppies and resource guarding prevention. We'll throw that into the chat as well. And there is some videos that go with that also. But if you already have a guarder, we're still going to condition a positive association. We're going to help them learn to be more comfortable through that incremental training plan. And then we're simultaneously going to be focusing on other incompatible behaviors. So things like leave it, drop it, maybe a recall, to get the dog to come off of those objects instead of us needing to approach to remove them. If we can use a leave it and prevent the dog from picking up the object in the first place, then he doesn't have anything to guard because he's left it. He's come back to us and we're paying him with steak or meatballs or chicken or something really high value to offset the fact that he left something that he thought was really valuable. So we need to pay that. We want to always remember that food is the dog's paycheck. So we cannot ask a dog to do these really difficult things that are against their instincts. Remember, they've got that buggy software telling them that they should be guarding these items, that they're super valuable to survival. If we're asking the dog to come away from that or to let us remove those objects, we need to pay that dog with high value food. So things like chicken, cheese, meatballs, hot dogs, really, really high value food. And then we want to have an emergency plan. And like I said, a management plan. So having an emergency plan, is not training. It's just your get out of jail free card so that nobody gets hurt. So you're not wrangling your dog if he's stolen something that is potentially dangerous. So maybe he picks up a plastic bag or saran wrap or something that could be potentially dangerous. You don't want to have to wrangle that from him because you could end up getting bitten. So what is your emergency plan in that situation? So coming up with that emergency plan so that if you're in that situation and it happens, this is what you're going to do. But really, more importantly, preventing that from happening because you're not far enough along in training. So if you have a dog who does snag things, if you drop it, he snags it. So if you're in the kitchen cooking and you drop a piece of saran wrap, he's going to be likely to snag that. I would baby gate the kitchen so that he can't come in and potentially steal something and be successful at that. So management is not only preventing him from potentially getting hurt or you getting hurt, it's preventing him from having opportunities to continue practicing these behaviors we don't really want him practicing. So just like anything, if a dog guards and they have opportunities to guard, they're going to get better at it. So prevention prevents them from having the opportunity to rehearse those behaviors. Next, oh, that's the end of the slides. So that's kind of the summary for resource guarding. We do have a couple of questions that were submitted ahead of time, but if you've got any questions, please add them into the chat and we will definitely pull those in. So let's start with the questions that were submitted. So we have from Instagram, my partner and I noticed that our dog is resource guarding his food, treats, snacks from me, but only when my partner is the one handling his food. Most recently, he was guarding against me while my partner was putting away his kibble from a Chewy order. Love Chewy and PetFlow. Another instance was while my partner was putting away our groceries and I walked into the kitchen while she was unloading them. So I have corresponded with this couple when they submitted the Instagram question. So I do have a little bit more background on it because I was a little fuzzy on exactly what was going on there. This sounds to me like potential location guarding. So rooms, like I said, dogs can guard entire rooms. So if you've got a kitchen or a pantry or something that is sort of preloaded with the association that there's valuable food there, dogs can guard those rooms. So if you're putting food away and someone else walks into the room, that dog could be guarding because you've entered the space where the food is. There could also be some relationship dynamics there that maybe, if there's, I know this isn't true with this particular question because I corresponded, like I said, with them. But if there is a history of aversive training or being scolded, or there's an association of that person taking away food from the dog, then the dog could have a preloaded association with that person being the person that forcibly removes stuff. I've had several clients who, when I was doing in-person training, came to me for resource guarded against family members. I came in, I did training, and the dog didn't resource guard at all because I didn't have a history with that dog of forcibly removing items from them. So when I approached, the dog had no reason to think that I was a threat or that I was going to remove those objects from him because I didn't have that history. So if the person does have a history of removing objects from the dog, that can certainly contribute. If the dog has connected the dots that that's where the food is or that's where the good stuff is, the dog could be guarding that room. Or there could be an element of person guarding in that situation. It doesn't sound like that from these descriptions. It all seems very food related. But when we have location guarding, the dog might be sitting on the couch with one person, and then the other person comes to sit on the couch and the dog snarks that person off for sitting too close to, no, this is my person, I don't want to share it. Or this is my resting spot, I don't want to share the couch with you. So it certainly can be any of those things at play. But because these all seem to be food related, I would lean in that category that either there's that association with the person removing food from that dog or guarding that space that houses the food. Next question. Also from Instagram, what about a dog who has never shown guarding tendencies before, but suddenly doesn't even want to let a cat walk near his favorite new favorite whatever? In other words, it's when he really loves something, not with everything. So familiarity plays a part in resource guarding in some cases. So a trusted, familiar adult, for instance, may be able to remove objects or remove food from a dog, but a complete stranger or maybe a child that isn't as familiar with that dog and doesn't have that trusted relationship may not be able to do that. The dog may guard against that. Guarding against other species, certainly, dog, cat, dog, human, definitely happens. Because it's only things that are new, novelty increases value for most dogs. So something that's new and really interesting and unique, maybe the dog has never had it, that increases that object's value. So it doesn't really surprise me. I would probably, if this isn't a resident cat, or even if it is a resident cat, I would probably focus heavily on management there, because whenever you have big size difference, big dog on small cat, there's a chance for injury there. You can do some training there, but if it's not a regular occurrence and it's just when the dog has something really new, maybe we want to create a space where the dog can saturate on that. And then, if it's not happening with food and water and stuff like that, then maybe we don't need to channel so much training energy into that. But novelty and familiarity certainly can contribute to resource guarding. Do we have any other questions? I think those were the only ones that we had submitted ahead of time. Questions? No? All right, well then maybe this is going to be a short one this week. I'm sorry I haven't been around the last month or two. I had surgery a couple weeks ago, so I took a little bit of a break so I could recover from surgery, and I was not doing lives, but I'm back in the swing of things. So if you've got topics for upcoming lives that you would like me to talk about, I would love to have suggestions. I would really like to be talking about and sharing information on topics that you guys are particularly interested in. So resource guarding, I know, is a hot topic. I've had a lot of clients recently all through COVID. I don't know if it's a factor of people being home more with their dogs, that they're witnessing more resource guarding or contributing to more resource guarding, or if it's a function of bad breeding, because dogs were in such short supply during COVID that lots of bad breeders kind of jumped on the bandwagon. But I've had a lot of resource guarders. I've had a lot of doodles and a lot of white Goldens with resource guarding recently. I can talk briefly about puppy. I did mention puppy resource guarding prevention, certainly. And I did a post in that post talking about things not to do when you have a puppy. So we don't want to just take stuff away from the puppy because we can. That doesn't prevent resource guarding. It can actually contribute to resource guarding. So if we just sort of bully puppies and take stuff away, or bully any dog and take stuff away just because we can, we're not teaching them to like having stuff taken away. We're teaching them that we're the bad guy that comes and takes stuff away, and now the dog is a loser. So if you have a puppy, I really encourage you to visit that resource guarding prevention post that we put in the chat a little bit earlier, and watch some of those videos on how to do it right. A lot of the puppies that are coming to me as older puppies, 6 or 8 months or 9 months, that are guarding now, the owners didn't know to do those resource guarding prevention exercises during that early socialization window. So puppies, when they're really young, up to about 12 weeks is their socialization window. And anything that happens to them in that window is incredibly formative into their adulthood. So if we teach them in those first 12 weeks of life to like having stuff taken away, and that we're not going to bully them, and that we're not just going to forcibly remove stuff from them because we can, then that dog is going to be much less likely to be a guarder later on in life. So if we lay that early foundation of trust, and you might have something and I'm going to take it away, I'm going to take it away, but I'm going to give you chicken. And so the dog is not a complete loser in that situation. So I would really encourage you to focus on those exercises with a puppy, or like I said earlier, if you have a new dog that you've gotten that isn't showing any resource guarding, to start to incorporate those exercises. Let's see. Would you do similar prevention? Yes, that was just an excellent question. Thank you, Carolyn. Definitely, if you've got a new rescue that isn't imminently displaying any resource guarding, I would encourage those similar prevention exercises, but I wouldn't start with something like a bully stick or a rawhide. I wouldn't start with something really high value. I would start with lower value things, maybe when you're playing with the dog. So a plushie toy, or a ball, or a rope toy, something lower value. Definitely watching that dog's body language, and especially if it's a new dog and you're not really super familiar with what that dog's body language is in those early weeks that you've got him, to really pay attention to that. So looking for things like whale eye and freezing and tensing up, as early subtle signs that the dog might be a little uncomfortable. And certainly channeling training energy into those other skills that I was talking about earlier, like the leave it and the drop it. I am going to be doing a short feature on the blog in the next couple of weeks. I think some of these terms that trainers use, leave it, drop it, that we have an understanding of what we think that cue or command is and what we want it to be, sometimes gets a little muddled with owners. So I've had a bunch of owners recently tell me, oh, he knows leave it, and he lets me take it out of his mouth. Well, that's not really a leave it. Leave it is preventing the dog from picking up the item in the first place. So they're really describing more of a drop it, where we want the dog to spit it out. So I'm going to be doing a sort of mini comparison. So, is it a leave it or is it a drop it? Is it a stay or is it a wait? And, comparing some of these terms that us as trainers, we throw out, and we might assume that the general population or our clients are on the same understanding as we are. But that's not always the case. So sometimes I think we need a little bit more clarification. But that was a great question, Carolyn. Thank you for that. Any other questions? All right. Well, give people a couple more seconds in case there's a little bit of a delay. If not, like I said, if you've got topics for future lives or blog posts or anything that you are just dying to have more good information on, post on social media, send me a direct message, contact me through the website. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me anywhere. If you are not on my newsletter, certainly you can subscribe to that either through the link on Facebook or directly on the website. I do newsletters every week. I do blog posts every week. And I'm really trying to tap into what my followers would like me to talk about. I don't want to just talk to random, topics that I'm coming up with. So if you have a burning question, you have a burning topic you would like good information on, definitely share that with me. And thank you so much for coming. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.